Hello everyone and welcome back to the Stamp Box. This is a follow-on from my previous unboxing video. I did mention that I was going to come back to this and probably forgot about it. So rather than just tack it on, once I had a quick look through this, I realised there's almost a full episode in this book alone. It's quite fascinating what's in here. So we'll get into this. If you haven't seen the previous one, you might like to pop back and have a look at it, but certainly this will be a standalone video, so you won't miss anything. You can always go back later. It was one of the big box that I discussed previously, and what's quite fascinating about this is how many other non-stamped things there are. It's actually only about half full, but what is there is quite intriguing. Some very unusual stuff, some I haven't seen for many years. So I'll start up the front here. And when I picked this up, the first thing I noticed was this. It's the Japanese government promising to pay 5 cents. That is Japanese invasion money. And what they did is when they took over a territory in Southeast Asia, they quickly commandeered all the local currency and issued these, and it was the only official currency they would permit. So basically they had control of the economy. This particular one has cents as the currency and it's written in English, so I would imagine this one is for the Malay states. There were others written in Dutch for Dutch East Indies, which is Indonesia of course nowadays, and having guilders as the currency. It can't be certain that this is genuine. One of the things the Allies did was mass produce these, dropped it into the local area to try and disrupt the currency again. Working from the top here, there's a lot of cutouts, US postage, not sure of the era, but based on the postage rate, I'm thinking about World War II era. Some of these are embossed, which is quite an interesting form of printing. There's something else I found in here that's quite interesting. I've actually never seen one of these before. Sorry, I've seen Australian ones, but I haven't seen foreign ones. It is a petrol rationing coupon from World War II. Of course, petrol, like many other goods, was rationed during the war, and this allowed selected people to get certain levels of petrol. You can tell by the letter C on it. They were graded depending on how much petrol you were allowed, and the letter C was a fairly high level, quite an allowance that they permitted, and that was probably for a doctor or someone important to the community at that time. Just sticking with the American ones for the moment, quite an old one, 2 cents. Can't quite make out who's on it. One of the presidents. Yeah, I'm going through those at the moment, so I'll sort that out. I think that's the banknote series, I'm not sure. And one that I don't have too many of is Hawaii. So 2 cents with the Queen on it, their Queen, of course, at the time. So that's, what was that, prior to 1959, I believe. It does get quite varied from here on. There's a Russian one with Vladimir Lenin on it, and again another early Russian one, possibly from about the 1920s, I think. Now there's one here I had to look up. I had seen them before, wasn't sure, and I had to write down what it was. This one here of the young kid breaking chains, and it's from the state of Slovenes, Croats and Serbs from the early 1920s. Like I say, I had seen them before, but interesting to finally get a copy. I would imagine that's part of what became Yugoslavia and has since broken up again. Now, a place that's in the news quite a lot lately, some Palestine stamps. There's an interesting little combination of history here. So they're overprinted Palestine in Arabic, English and Hebrew. The actual stamp itself is EEF, which is Egyptian Expeditionary Force. So basically a British stamp overprinted for use in Palestine. I believe there are others for different regions in the Middle East, but basically a British stamp issued for Egypt and then sort of overprinted for the locality a very old and faded stamp, so I don't know what that one is. Oh, actually, this is why I kept that aside. There's some writing on the back. It's Cyrillic. I don't know what it means. I think it's more maybe propaganda rather than advertising, which I've got some others here that are adverts. Yeah, I'm going to have a very high magnification look at that. I'll put up a photo of the back there. If anyone in the comments would like to translate it for me, I'd be very appreciative. So some interesting stuff there, an old Syrian one. Okay, skip through a few here, some old Polish and a German one, which seems to have been, if I can just prize it out there, it's got 2,000 marks, so that's quite a high value. That would most likely be the hyperinflation that they had in the 30s, wasn't it? Was it 20s, 30s? Yes, which obviously led to significant changes in history there. A couple here, 3 or 4 of them. I didn't know of these, but I hadn't got any. They're Spanish Civil War stamps. I don't think they're postage. I think these are actually some sort of a fundraiser. I just looked up what the meaning of that was. It's for the combatants or for the soldiers. So it's probably a local fundraising initiative. They seem to have been quite a lot of them done there. From Lugo, which I actually have a friend that moved there. It's in the north of Spain. And I believe there were some other local ones that were issued as well. But yeah, interesting. I haven't sorted out all my Spanish stamps yet. It's going to be a bit of a challenge because you had the Civil War. There was the Royals before that. I'm pretty good at history, but it's one place I don't really know that much of. So I'm looking forward to following up on that. These 4 here, quite good quality for the age of them. Something like Timbre Movil, M-O-V-I-L, and 1898. I rightly guess they were Spanish colonies, but the best I can find so far with a quick glance online is that they're from the Philippines, which at one stage was a Spanish territory colony. I'm not sure how they defined it. So yeah, interesting. I have seen a few others of those. I don't have many. There's a couple here. I'm not really sure what they are, actually. That looks like it was cut off an envelope. It's not franked onto it, with a rubber stamp or anything like that. But I'm not sure what that is. If anyone can identify it, it seems to be German, but not something I speak. So if anyone can tell me what it is, it's got a value. So whether it was a surcharge or something, I don't really know. And similarly, this one here, no value that I can see, written in, actually I thought it was Cyrillic originally, but I'm not 100% sure. So really happy if anyone can identify that and tell me what it is. I didn't get a chance to look up this one. South Africa, 1936. And there's a word there, Kersmis. I don't know what that is, but actually just glancing at it, I did spot there's a symbol on here, and I was just about to get to them. I'll come back to that in a moment because I think I've just now realised what it is. There's one small American stamp here that I was delighted to find. It's a 3-cent stamp featuring a train locomotive. It's one of the pictorial series that came out in 1869, I think it was. It didn't last very long because it was heavily criticised at the time. Previous stamps had national figures like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, and it was felt a bit disrespectful and criticised for not having other famous people on them as well. You can see from the cancellation, which is really an obliterator more than a cancellation, It's one that I mentioned in a previous video where they just carved a piece of cork from a wine bottle and used that as the stamp. Pretty much covers about 85% of the stamp. You sort of have to look hard to find out what it is. I do have a copy of that. They're kind of scarce because they weren't issued for very long, but I'm delighted to get that because it's actually a better copy than the one I have. A couple of advertising, I wouldn't call them stamps. They would have been on a booklet most likely. The stamps have been overprinted on the back or printed on the back for advertising for quite some time in many places. These are British ones, one for Virginia cigarettes, and if any smokers among you, you get 100 for 5 shillings at some stage. And the other one is for a lolly company, or sweets as they tend to call them in Britain. First one, the cigarettes from a place in Regent Street, which is quite central London. And the other one just says London, doesn't give a location. Interesting. Now, this page has got quite a few Christmas seals. Christmas seals are a charity drive, usually for children's charities and normally for lung cancers and diseases like tuberculosis. Apparently they go back about 120, 125 years to Europe, not the United States as I mistakenly thought. Many of them have this double-barred cross on them, which is the fight against TB, the symbol for it. These particular ones are, what have we got, 1971 and one in the mid-60s. Oh, this one's, yes, I thought they were just Christmas stamps, those, but it's got that cross on it, so 1967. So mid-60s to early 70s USA, those ones. The other few down here from New South Wales, the Anti-TB Association of New South Wales in Australia, of course. They don't actually refer to them as Christmas seals on that. I'm not sure if that's the term that would have been used at the time. But yeah, widespread, much more so than I thought. Here's a few more. Doesn't say what country. 1957, but again, an anti-TB thing. Found these, it's probably just an advertising label, I think, more than anything else. St. George Festival of Flowers. Now, St. George is a name that pops up in many places, but this particular one seems to be in New South Wales in Australia in the suburb of Hurstville. Now, as I said, there's a lot of empty space in this, but what's in there is really quite nice. Some modern stamps, I think nothing more than about 20 or 30 years old. These are all Pacific Islands, Nauru, Samoa, and the Solomon Islands. This one here, it's got Solomon Islands and it's been blanked out above that. I wonder if that was, they used to call it the British Solomon Islands and they took that name out. Whether it's a post-independence thing, I'm not sure. It's still got the Queen on it. They didn't block her out, as often does happen in some places where they change who's running the place. Interesting. I've only just noticed that now as I was talking to you there. Popping over the page, some nice old New Zealand, going back to the 30s. Of course, New Zealand did a lot of these health stamps. I think they're still actually doing them. It's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, pounds previously for charity, for health. I think, again, mostly children's health. There's some of these are pre-decimal, and there's New Zealand always produced quite large stamps for Christmas. 1963, they had a long time, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, of putting paintings, Christmas paintings, or sorry, religious paintings on their Christmas stamps, which they did for many, many years. I'm not sure. I don't collect modern, so I don't know if they're still doing it. Some older ones, that's the coronation. When was that? Early 30s? Must have been about mid-30s, sorry, yes. That one there is the jubilee of the reign of King George V. New Zealand was one of the countries that did their own design on stamps. Most others had a common design that went through pretty much the whole Commonwealth, or the whole empire it would have been at the time. But New Zealand was a little bit different. Yeah, so I have most of those. I'll check my album, and I typically keep the best one and put the others back in for a sale sometime in the future. A couple of modern Netherlands, not something I'd be too interested in. Oh, a couple of very old ones too. And that one's Ned Indy, which is the Dutch Indies, Netherlands Indies. Caribbean, isn't it? Yes. I have to keep practicing my geography. A few South American ones here. Guatemala. Well, that's Central America, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. And Uruguay, which is South America. The two here, a bit difficult to follow where they're from. I think it's written in Cyrillic. Oh, I can see just enough to make out Bulgaria there. B-U-L-G. Yeah, so quite old. The middle of those looks very blank, and what it is, they're the embossed ones where the design was actually pressed into the paper rather than printed. Trouble is, of course, over a course of 100 or more years, it being handled, it gets flattened out and almost disappears. I can barely make it out. I'd need a stronger magnifying glass to see who's in there. But interesting. I heard recently, and I don't claim to be an expert, that people often refer to Cyrillic as the Russian alphabet when some linguists think it should be the Bulgarian alphabet. So anyway, I'm not getting into that. That's their argument. Comments, please, if you wish. These Italian ones I quite like. They're sort of famous scenery and famous towns. They're very nice vertical design, quite nice, and I know there's a hell of a lot of them. So I will have to go through that. They just feature sort of various towns. What have we got? Siena, a few old Fiji, poor condition, and I have a fairly decent one there, the map series as it was called. And there's one here, another one with the little sailboat on it. I actually don't think I have that one, so glad to come across him. An overprinted one. Okay. Timbre, which is it French? For stamp and fiscal. So a fiscal stamp, centavos currency. So, it must be, I don't know, is French and Spanish similar for the word for stamp? Timbre or timbre or something like that. And a few other, this is very varied anyway. Portuguese colony, Guinea. Portugal had a handful of colonies around the world, Africa and India. It was Brazil as well, I can't remember. They speak Portuguese, so I'm guessing it was at some stage. Yeah, I had to squint at this one for a while previously. It's Spanish and it's overprinted, but it's a bit hard to read, but then I realised it's Azores, the Azores Islands in the North Atlantic. Mostly a page of Japan. And something that often happens here, you often see Japan, and they've got a couple of Chinese stamps mistakenly put in there. So those three, at least the Chinese, unsure on that one. I hate to narrow it down to something so basic, but when you've got two ancient cultures, the difference between Japan and China in their own writing, the simplest way I can describe it is on Japan, the first character is invariably two rectangles. It's almost like putting two bricks on top of each other. So that's Japan, whereas with China, it's almost that same brick shape and a line vertically going down through the middle of it. Again, that's the most basic way of describing it. There are other sort of things in Chinese stamps. They can be various parts of the country, may not have that exact thing on it. Sometimes you'll see advice pages on the websites and that sort of thing to say to look out for the little round flower that represents the sun. But that is also on some Chinese ones, so that doesn't always give it away correctly. And just to prove my point, here's another Chinese one. I hadn't spotted that. An imperial post one. I think they were about the pre-1920, I think. So I'll just put him there where I can keep an eye on him and sort him out later. Yeah, there's that round symbol that you often see on Japanese ones. But again, that can be on the early Chinese ones, particularly those with Sun Yat-sen from the early 20th century. A couple of Latvian stamps. Actually, I just thought they were Latvian, but are they Lithuanian? No, judging by the writing, Latwiija, I think I was right the first time, Latvia. Quite a large stamp. I've seen a few of those around. There's a fair number of them in that series and similar, but I don't know what era they are. I'm guessing because they are their own stamps, it must have been prior to the Russians taking over. So that would have been pre-World War II. I know they've gone back to their own independence now and their own stamps. These are interesting, and I really don't know what's happening here. So we've got 3 of these cards. Each of them has a stamp. It's not hinged or anything. It's actually stuck with its own glue. They were mint stamps stuck on the back of the card. It's an unusual way to do marketing, which this seems to be. So the card itself is produced by Lipton, I'm guessing the tea people. So it says, enjoy the world's greatest hobby. We are. Collect stamps, and then there's details of Lipton brings you 1,200 of the world's most beautiful stamps, pictorial, space, thematic type thing. A lot of these things were done as a thematic push. So here it is. So every Lipton teapot bag contains a valuable stamp to save or swap. Okay, well. Their definition of a valuable stamp and mine and yours are probably varying a bit. There were common ones, Grenada, and it's a ½ stamp, so they just bought a couple of sheets and started whacking them on. Yugoslavia with a red cross on it. Okay, so that's interesting. A lot of people are very keen on Red Cross. It's a funny way to do marketing. You'd think they'd have them loose in a little foil bag or something like that, or a plastic bag, but yeah, okay. And then they're advertising for $1.50 you could have got an 80-page deluxe album and 40 different stamps with a catalogue value of over $2, hinges and a stamp finder booklet. So very typical of the marketing of that era. It's not dated, but I'm guessing late 60s, early 70s, decimal currency of course, so mid to late 60s at least. Instructions down the bottom. Remove the stamp, soak in warm water. Well, we all know that. I haven't seen Lipton ones. I know the petrol stations when I was a kid were very much into this sort of thing. I'm in Australia. I'm guessing it was worldwide, something along those lines. But yeah. What do we got here is a letter card. I thought at first it was sealed up, but it's not. So that's your letter card. You don't see these much nowadays. You write your message or your letter in there, and then you seal it around the edges, and you probably can't see it too clearly, but on this side actually it's clearer. You can see the perforation, so when it gets there, you just tear off there, and there's your message. I thought this was rather strange. It says, please remember to address this letter card. So, not sure they think we're a bit silly. And the same on the back. It's marked as 7 cents, which, judging by that postal rate, that would have been probably early 70s, but that's only for Australia. So it says if it's sent to a place outside Australia, additional postage is required. I don't believe they're doing anything like that nowadays, certainly not in Australia. I've got a feeling it was probably a cheaper rate than a letter of the same size, because the weight and the standard size made it easier to sort. A block of, what do we got? USA These are the ones, bald eagle, elephants, age of reptiles, etc. And a ceremonial canoe, Haida. I'm not sure if that's the name of the peoples that it represents. I believe they were mid-70s, possibly in time for their bicentennial. Right, just moving on to this item here. It's sort of the most intriguing thing in the whole album. This is, it's obviously a ticket for someone to go to a cinema or a theatre, because it's got balcony, row and seat numbers. But it has some old stamps on it. The stamps themselves say they're Palestine, they're revenue, and one's covering the other, but I'm guessing they're both revenue stamps. Trilingual, so it's got English, Arabic and Hebrew. The ticket itself seems to be only written in Hebrew, and it is dated, it's almost like a postmark, but I don't think it was used postally, 27th of July in 1941. I'll try and put a good copy of it online or on this video, so that if anyone who does read Hebrew can maybe fill me in on what's happening here, or if anyone understands the circumstances as to what it's for and why there was a revenue tax put on what seems to be some sort of a theatre ticket. I'd be very interested in that. And also very intriguing here is I've got two of these emergency airmail service, and one's from Melbourne to London and the other one's in the return direction, London back to Melbourne. I knew I had seen these somewhere before. I've actually never had real copies of them. And then I remembered where it was. The Australian Stamp Catalogue, 1976 edition. I was given this in 1976, so it shows how old both I and my collection are. And there was a mention in there of what was happening with this. There was a postal strike in Melbourne, not all of Melbourne, which was significant, and they set up, it's basically a courier service. So it cost $1.50, sorry, no, it cost $2.50 because there's two stamps that had to be used. There's a $1.50 and a $1 stamp. On that one they're not perforated, and that was to take the mail over to London and put it back into their own system there, which just made me realise you probably still need to have had regular stamps on it as well, or it wouldn't have been carried by the local service over there. The return one, they're perforated, so it would have got 20, 35, 45, 50 pence. Comparable prices, but this is the one for coming back. According to that book, about 5,000 pieces were carried. It didn't last long because, as is often the case with these strike avoiding, it'd be strike avoiding, isn't it? These systems, the strike spread. I don't know if it was because of that or independent of that, and they no longer could do that system. But yeah, I'm delighted to find those. 1971 it was, apparently. Now, a bit of a mixed bag on this page. I'll come back to those booklets. Didn't realise there was so many. What have we got here? It's from Chile. I don't speak Spanish, but I can recognise enough to know it was like the 10th anniversary of the process of regionalisation. Doesn't give a date. 1984, so commemorating something that started 10 years prior. A nice block. Unfortunately, someone's taken out one of the stamps, which sort of spoils it a bit. This one here, I have no idea what this is. Basically, it's a card, postcard quality. It's got, they're not stamps, they're printed onto the paper. So what have we got? 20 cents, 10 cents and 5 cents, 35 total. But the printing is basically of the 20 shilling stamp, the kangaroo map, Australia's first stamp, with this stray little kangaroo without any map. So I don't know what's happening there. It could have been a, I don't know, was it a privately produced thing? If anyone knows, I'd be really happy to find out. This album had several booklets. Most of them, there's 3 different sorts here. 4. Okay, these are the Prime Minister's series. So 25-cent stamps sold for $1, a little booklet there. But what's interesting, in every case of these ones, someone has taken out the bottom 4 stamps and they've left the top stamp and the details of who this is. So that's Edmund Barton. He was our first Prime Minister, 1901 to 1903. The next one, little bits of paper between them. Deacon, was it? Well, Watson, sorry, the next fellow. Reed, I know, was 3rd. Yes. Okay. Thank you, history teachers. So the Prime Ministers of Australia are for various years, but did I miss one there? 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's Deacon. Yes, he was the second one. Okay, so Barton, Deacon, Watson, Reed. So again, unusual that in all those books, and there's 7 or 8 of them, they've taken out the bottom 4 stamps and used them, and for some reason left the others. These are famous Australians, and the same thing is done there. 2 pilots, I don't really know who they are. Lachlan Macquarie, who was a New South Wales governor. Adam Lindsay Gordon, a poet. Oh, he lived a lot earlier than I thought. I thought he was more recent. He died in 1870. I thought he was in the 20th century. John Eyre, Edward John Eyre, who died in 1901. Explorer, Lake Eyre. I think it's the biggest lake in Australia, named after him. Again, they've taken out the bottom 4 stamps and left the others. So, yeah, same in all of those. They were a common thing in the 60s and 70s, the little booklets, very handy. This one, similar booklet, and luckily they've still got the stamps in them. Canada, 2, they seem to be different designs, but seem to be the same series. Both got 6 stamps in them. What have we got? 17, an unusual rate. 2 17s, 34, 35. So 50 cents they would have cost at the time. Bilingual on the back, of course, French and English, about the trees that are described there. Yeah, so 2 of those. Another famous Australian, again, I don't know why. I'd love to know why anyone would take off the 4 bottom stamps and leave the rest. Caroline Chisholm, who was a social worker for women in early Australia. Albert Namatjira, an Indigenous artist, died in 1959. He did beautiful landscapes. He was very famous for that and quite well known even in his own time. And A.B. Patterson, Andrew Barton Patterson, commonly known as Banjo Patterson. What he's most famous for is he wrote Waltzing Matilda. He wrote it as a poem, not as a song. It was put to music later. So another little booklet there. Again, 25-cent stamps. So it was 4 cents when we went decimal. So probably late 60s, maybe 71, 72. Okay. Nearly there. I think we're just about at the end. This one's almost comical. The Royal Wedding. So it's Princess Di and Prince Charles. Of course, now she's sadly deceased and he is the king. But issued in the Republic of Liberia, a place with no British associations. They, like much of that West African region, the nations there, they know that stamps are very collectible. They're a good way to get Western money into the country. There's no reason why Liberia had any connection to that other than it just seems to be a bit of a push to get money out of the the Western collectors. Last few, nothing behind this fellow, is there? Nope. The Cocos Islands, a strip of 3 racing boats. Looks like an outrigger, or is that 2 boats? Yeah, it's an outrigger, so a twin hull. They were very stable, those. That's why they designed that. And a sailing boat. Better minds than me will know what sort it is. Cocos Islands, of course, Indian Ocean. I'm not quite sure how its status is now. It was a territory of Australia. I know when I was a kid, the Australian government wanted to take it over, but I don't know who now owns it. It was a family owned them at one stage, the Cunis Ross family. But yeah, something I'll look up later. And the last of this lot, it's a mini sheet. Actually, looking at the front, it's hard to tell how many are on it, but flip it over to the back and you can see it's 6 stamps, all of different sizes, squares and rectangles. It's the United Nations, 6 cents per stamp, and it's called the Chagall window, Chagall window, and it was printed in 1967. I've actually been into the the United Nations building, the one in New York. I know they have others, but I'm guessing that's the one. So, yeah, interesting. So, like I said, it was quite an intriguing mixture, that lot. Certainly too much to have added on to the last video that I put up there, but I hope you've seen that as well. Please leave a comment, and especially if you know any of the answers to the questions I asked going through, or correct me where I was wrong. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you again before too long.